Today's guest is the founder and CEO of the Modern Mystic Shop in Atlanta, Georgia. She's a spiritual development teacher, tarot reader, and author of this amazing book, Spells for the Modern Mystic, a ritual guidebook and spell casting kit. She's featured in Goop, on Good Morning America, Glamour Magazine, and US Weekly. But most impressively, in my opinion, I believe Kelley has read for over thousands of people, and she has like a 400-person waitlist to get a tarot card reading. So she knows what she's doing, okay? This is why she's on. Her expertise is vast, but today we're going to be picking her brain specifically about tarot, ritual work, altar building, and psychic awakening and development. This is a hot topic. We got a lot of questions about that. I get questions in the DMs and YouTube comments like, is it anxiety? Is it my intuition? Is it my higher self? So I'm excited for that portion of the conversation. Here at Elemental Clarity, we're all about optimizing our energy to optimize our results. And so much of what Kelley teaches complements that. Complements the achiever's desire for aligned and fulfilling growth. Throughout this chat, I'm going to ask her to share with us some additional tools to help the Feng Shui you already have in place to help you manifest even more. Be sure to stay tuned until the end of this video, where I'm also going to ask Kelley to share some details about her upcoming Learn Tarot training. Remember that waitlist I said she has, right? About 400 people. She's the lady you want to learn from if you have ever been interested in learning about tarot. So stay tuned for that. Kelley.
Yes.
This is a Feng Shui and manifestation channel. So a lot of people on here are looking around their space and they're wanting to be more intentional. A lot of your work talks about altars in your space. And as somebody who was raised Catholic, and I believe in God, when I think of an altar, I think of Jesus. So It wasn't until working with you a little bit more and getting to know your work and reading your book that I heard about altars. So what is an altar in your words, and how can we use altars to manifest more of what we want and make more progress?
Well, first, I appreciate you drawing the connotation to religion, because that's a lot of my work is helping people reframe and redefine words like altar, like ritual, in a non-religious context, but a more spiritual context. And I love to have those conversations. And not enough people ask me that question and talk about the religious connotation. So I'm going to answer your question, but I also want to say that if you consider yourself spiritual, non-religious, a lot of the religious programming that you have growing up, I was also raised Catholic, will sometimes transfer to these non-religious practices and your own spirituality that you're developing. And so it's good to look out for that if there have been negative experiences or negative associations. It kind of gets projected on the new thing, and it might create the fear or the blocks to the manifestation, to the creation. So I just wanted to mention that since you brought up, briefly religion. I know it wasn't directly your question. I like to simplify these definitions. So to me, an altar is a space, a sacred space in which you use to do ritual work or manifestation work. It's got to be treated with reverence. It's got to be, that's basically it. Any space that you create that's treated with reverence. And so we even call my store, and why we have physical brick and mortar and why that's important to me, that's an altar. We actually have referred to it as like, this is the altar of Modern Mystic. It's a spiritual space created with reverence for the purpose of transformation and growth and healing. So that's sort of how I
spiritual space of reverence used for transformation and healing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think many things could be an altar. And then I love altar work. And that's why I loved working with you, because you're like, create this little corner as an expression of yourself. And I made it an altar because I think an altar does a few things. Number one, a lot of this work that we're doing with energy, and you probably know a lot about this, energy is so, I don't want to say it's intangible to a degree.
Yeah.
You can feel it, but it's intangible. So altar spaces, I think, anchor the energy, create intentional spaces for you to focus your energy and desire. Because I think a lot of magic and manifestation is also to do with your psyche and your beliefs and what you reinforce. And I think these altar spaces can reinforce your goals and your desires. I think that altar spaces can create dedicated space for you that also tells your spirit and your mind, I'm important. This is
Mhm.
mine. Like, this is carved out in this whole big wide world, even if it's just like a 1 foot little corner. This is for me. And then when you use it as a ritual working space, it creates more specific results for certain targets and goals that you're trying to manifest for yourself and create. I'm trying to think if and then I had a teacher once, I thought this was interesting, and I know it's spelled differently, but an alter, an ALTAR, can
Mm.
alter, ALTER, your consciousness. It can change
Mm.
and alter your consciousness by the repetition, by the reminder, by the intentionality that you use to create that space. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that is why I teed this up and said it totally complements it because I say when you feng shui, you give your space attention with intention.
Mhm.
And maybe what I do is more macro. And it's funny because I always thought I was getting as micro as you could get once we get from outside landscape forms to inside office. But you're getting even more micro by saying, like, this altar is for me, this space, this even like corner of my corner office, right?
Mhm.
Is for me and this like reminder. I say you set up your space like a 3D vision board and you use the energy, you align your office, let's say, with the energy in your space, but your altar is like even more of a representation and like a trigger, a positive trigger as you're walking through the space. Like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want. This is what's working out for me. It's like a nice little moment and reminder.
And for me, I engage with it on a daily basis. So it's
Okay.
also like a space to do that work. So every
Mm.
morning, and there's multiple kinds of altars. I have many altars in my space, but for the primary one that I work with on a daily basis, that's where I'm sitting and I'm pulling my cards and I'm doing my meditation and I'm doing my journaling. I'm lighting my candle, I'm lighting the incense, and those products that come from Modern Mystic have also layers of ingredients and intentionality to reinforce through sight, through smell, through just herbalism, etc. That intention that I'm working on. And then
So
there's other, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So on that note, people have feng shuied their space. So whether can you tell us or share with us, because then you and I have feng shuied your office. Can
Mhm.
you share with people how you have an altar in your space and how you've combined the two, like how you merged it? What can people take away from this question? Like today, obviously, like the book would be great to get, and they get even more specific with a ritual. But knowing how you feng shuied your office, how would
Mhm.
you and so people watching this have done that, how would you, like, pair the 2? What could they take
Yeah.
away from this
So,
conversation?
and I don't remember this feng shui. This is why you're the expert. Word for or what is that corner where I put my altar? What did you tell me? You said, do you remember what it
Well,
was?
so you have a couple, kind of. You have, like, 3, but if we're talking
Yeah.
about the one on the round
Yeah.
table, that was, like,
Yeah.
your I am showing up my fullest, most powerful,
Mhm.
like, self. This
Yeah.
was, like, Kelley's getting back into, like, dominating her business, right?
Mhm. So I chose to create that as an altar space. And so part of me being my most powerful, magnetic, dominating self is to create that inner world, that space for my inner world to get aligned, because that's how I create my outer world. And instead of it
Mm.
being something that's fixed, so the altar space where I'm keeping it is fixed, it is something that I'm refreshing and changing on a usually monthly basis. I've been lately been changing it with the zodiac season. So I'll do
Mm.
a refresh for Libra season or and things of that nature. Um, as as I'm growing and changing, it has become like a more organic expression of my most powerful self and what I'm focusing on, instead of certain areas of my room that we've created are more fixed, where the objects aren't moving and it's something that's more permanent and anchored. So I
Yeah.
that's what I loved to use it. And I thought at first I thought it was going to be a fixed altar where it's like all of my most precious things, but then it felt so good to work in that space that I was just sort of like going with it. It's like, okay, well, I want to refresh the color scheme, or I want different crystals or whatever for based on how I'm expressing and growing and impacting my business today.
Yeah. And so if people are like, "Ooh, I'm intrigued. I want to do an
Mhm.
altar, like, right now." Would you
Yeah.
say the book's the next best step to learn
Actually,
about it?
no, you don't. So we do have various altars. And if you wanted to do like an ancestral altar, love, wealth, something like that, a home blessing altar, those are in the book for sure. But if you
Okay.
wanted to create something for yourself today, what I recommend is getting something that represents one of each of the four elements. And I know you work with elements. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes.
so it's like earth, air, fire, water, and we have all three usually represented on an altar space to make it grounded and balanced. And that's the basics. And then if you want to layer on top of that, you can find associations for colors or for the like fire could be a candle, right? If you want to attract money and that's your focus of the altar, you could get a green or gold candle. White candles are sort of used for anything. Earth element could be a crystal, and then you can find a crystal that aligns with your goal. So we'll stick with money for whatever reason. Could be pyrite or citrine or green aventurine that you can add there. Um,
Mm,
Air, I love. For me, it's incense. And so, like, we sell abundance incense. So you can burn abundance incense that has the elements intentionally handmade for you to amplify that energy. Water is really easy. It's like you can have a glass of water on there, but there's also other elements. So that would just be the basics. If you come up with four items that represent each of the elements and then bonus points if those items correlate or amplify the intention, that's a great
amazing.
place to start. And then what I like to do, because a lot of people are off put by altars because they don't want it to look like a church or look like
Yeah.
something super witchy. So for me, I enjoy making my altar space sort of hide in plain sight. Like it's
Right.
just beautiful to look at. There's flowers, there's this, there's that. So it's not like people are walking through my office and being like, "Oh, there's your altar," necessarily.
Right.
It's
No, no,
quiet.
no. Right.
As a
Yours are
connotation.
very, like, hidden. When we were doing your feng shui, I mean, one didn't exist yet, but you kind of, like, had them in front of you and behind you, so, yeah, they are
Well, you
beautiful.
have them little there's a book called Little Altars Everywhere, and I can't remember what the book's about, but, like, that's kind of my home. It's like little altars everywhere. I have, like, a little baby altar for my puppy. I mean, I
Oh,
love
cute.
it. I love it.
Yeah. I get people ask that a lot, "Can I feng shui for my pet?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So maybe we'll do the altar. I'll send them your way. Say, "We'll do an altar
Yeah.
for your pet." I
I won't
love
say get their crate out of your office.
Yes. Thank you,
We
thank
did.
you. It did work, right? It did help. Next question. So on the lines of energy in our space, a question that came in from Instagram is, any advice on using sage and other similar things in your house to change the energy?
Yes, I love this question. First, I do want to talk about sage in particular. So sage, I don't know if the average person knows, is I don't know if it's endangered, but it's intended to be used sparingly. And we do use sage at times and we do sell it in my store, but it's usually mixed with other supporting herbs and used
Mm,
within reverence. All botanical, everything we're going to talk about today with altars and ritual, it's reverence. Use it with respect and reverence, and especially sage, I would say sparingly. I would also say when you're using these products, um, to ensure that you're buying them from someone like me, where it's ethically sourced, where it's not harming indigenous cultures and all of that. And the last thing I will say about the sage in this context is make sure you don't call it smudging unless you are actually a native person who has been taught the proper ritual of smudging. That is a Native American sacred practice. And so this is where we get into sort of like conversations about cultural appropriation, etc. So
mm,
that's one thing.
that's a good thing to know, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so my recommendation is unless you absolutely have a specific spiritual need for sage, to inform yourself about other sacred herbs that you can use for smoke and
Mm,
clearing, and then alternative products. So rosemary is great if you're trying to get protection in the space. Burning rosemary, it's abundant. It's beautiful. Lavender to create peace in your space. There's so many other different herbs that we recommend and sacred, we call them sacred smoke that you can burn. In addition to what I love to use to clear space is incense. So,
You
ethically
have some
sourced
in your kit. Incense in your kit. It's like a
yeah,
good, easy, fits in the kit. It's a good starter incense. Like if anybody didn't know
totally.
what to buy.
Yeah, totally. That's a good starter incense, but if you were to purchase incense from me or another brand, I would just make sure that it's non-toxic, because
Mm,
there's a lot of very cheap incense out there, and we don't really. I believe that, as I'm sure you do, everything is energy. So the intentionality and the ingredients and everything that's made impacts the efficacy and the I guess the impact of the product. So I love using incense to clear space and to shift the energy. And then what's really fun that's like our number one selling product. And I hate to be sound like I'm pitching Modern Mystic, but basically Modern Mystic is all my
pitch it.
favorite things that I've created to sell to people because I use
People
it.
want a one-stop shop. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
Let them know you got it.
we have these aromatherapy sprays that have a lot of the botanicals in them. They're organic, they smell delicious, and it's really easy. Like if you don't want to light up sage in your office or in your car or whatever, we have these sprays that shifts the energy and they're aligned with different intentions. So for abundance or clearing,
Mm.
clearing is really popular if you just want to reset the energy of the space,
Right. Yeah,
protection,
like
etc. And I would just say, if you are gonna burn sacred smoke, I think a lot of people don't know the steps. So you do wanna, if you can, I can't in my new place, but crack windows and doors to let the lower energies escape. And then let's say the sage, for instance, is going to clear the energy, but you wanna fill it back up so it's not just an energetic void. And that's when you wanna use a follow-up. So you can use
mm.
something like sweetgrass, or you can use sound, you can play mantra music or use chimes, you can use, essential oils, you can really fill the space up back with a lot of other options, so that you clear the energy and then you fill the void with something aligned with the tone and the intention that you want in the space.
Yeah, that's such a no one I've never heard anybody answer that way, that to fill it back up. I have I've gotten this question, of course, people think like with feng shui, they think it's decluttering and they think it's saging your house, the smudging.
Yeah, right, right, right.
And what I say to be I actually, if I've been doing feng shui for 11 years now, I did not start putting say walking around my house with sage until like 2021 because I don't think that they have to be related, and I always saw sage as like, somebody asked, "Can you do it too much?" And I think so, kind of. I wonder what your thoughts are on this. Whenever I hear somebody's like, "I have to clear the energy," and I'm like, then this is my thinking, that the thought behind saging is usually like, get out bad, there's so much bad, get out." And so you're just so focused on the bad and the out. And so I think maybe that's why it just never resonated with me for the longest time. And I resonate more with the filling it up. I'm like, just open your windows and
Mhm.
whatever feels stuffy is going to go out. And then like think about and feel what you want to call in. And so I love that you're adding something ritualistic to it, like the sweet grass and the other sprays. I'm much more like, what are you calling in? And not let's worry
Mhm.
about making sure everything bad gets out of this place. Just open the doors,
Yeah,
open the windows, say goodbye,
totally.
and then focus more on like, what do you want to call in? I love that the adding the sprays and the herbs and stuff to it to fill it back.
Yeah, or like I said, sound goes a long way. You can
Yeah, sound
chant, you
will.
can play music, you can, and also, I mean, this is super easy, but open your not just your windows, but like the shades. Light
Yeah.
light is a purifier and clears energy too. And sometimes people keep their shades down, or there might be a room in their house where they like their bedroom or something, they never
Sprays
open the
never
shade.
right.
Let those suckers open at least for a few
Yeah.
hours because it can regenerate the energy. Solar energy is really magical and very powerful
Yeah.
and very positive. It's a very positive energetic frequency.
Yeah. Okay, Kristen, so there you go. There's your answer.
Thanks,
Thank you
Kristen.
for your question. Next question. So now we're going to get more into this higher self
Mm.
stuff. I always say that life is more serendipitous when you feng shui. You're just in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people, talking to you're just like bumping into the right people and the right next things are unfolding. But as the energy's unfolding, say we just opened all our windows, say we feng shuied a little bit and we built our first altar, the energy's unfolding and sometimes people leave and we didn't want them to leave. Sometimes things are removed from our life and we didn't want that to be removed. Sometimes something doesn't look great before it gets better, or sometimes that next step isn't super obvious.
Okay.
So the question is, how do, as someone as highly intuitive as yourself, how do you decipher between higher self, intuition, listening to your gut, and just the everyday life and ego voice?
Yeah. So a lot of people, the most simple way I've been asked this question is, how do I tell the difference between intuition and anxiety? That's kind of what it boils down to. And so okay, also to say, I don't always listen to my intuition. I mean, I usually always hear it, but sometimes stubborn and I don't always do the thing. So just throwing that out there, that that's a totally normal and natural thing. And I also think that there's value in some of those roads, right? Where it's like, oh, I learned I should listen to my intuition more, or
Yeah, even the modern mystic doesn't always listen.
yeah, absolutely not. So I would just say this. I I think that people's bodies are, especially if you don't have a lot of other intuitive development like clairaudience or clairvoyance or anything like that, I think your body tells you everything. So
Yeah.
if you're getting a hit and it feels like anxiety, if it feels like you're contracting, there's an urgency. Unless it's an actual emergency, there are times, I guess, like rare times where like your intuition is like, don't cross the street, or in like all of a sudden you see a car that would have hit you or whatever. But generally speaking, if it
Right.
feels urgent, if it feels stressful, if it feels like that kind of energy, that and your body is reacting in an unregulated way,
Mhm.
that's probably anxiety, ego, whatever. If it feels relaxed, if it feels like a curiosity, I wonder if I could do that, or that does seem like an interesting idea. If it feels like, yeah, like aligned in that way, it's usually intuition. Now, the issue is that a lot of times people do think anxiety is intuition, or some of these signs. Oh gosh, this is a whole other conversation about your unconscious creating experiences that are often misunderstood as intuition. There's a Jungian phrase that says, until you make your unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. There's
Mm,
also stuff like that happening. So, for instance, do you want me
right.
to go
The
down
layer.
that path? Or no? Do you want me to go down that unconscious path?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I don't think so here, because
Okay.
I know some of the layers that you would get into, and I think it would get a lot.
Okay. So the basics is, if it feels uncomfortable, urgent, like you're fearful, that's anxiety. If it feels calm, aligned, inspiring, in awe, that's intuition. And so check
I
in
think
with
I
yourself.
like the curious. That's good. Yeah. And
Yeah,
the
like I wonder
inspiring
if,
and the curious. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
and like, yeah,
Nice. If.
yeah, could be, maybe, you know what I mean? And so those sorts of energies and thoughts and feelings are usually an intuition indicator.
Yeah. And are you, I know you mentioned, we kind of mentioned this indirectly, but I know for me, I my like skills got strengthened, and I'll say this to people listening who maybe have like a regular 9 to 5 or are like an architect or an engineer. It really does take like conscious time. My gut, my intuition, my deciphering got a lot stronger when I started working with energy as like a job every day, right?
Mm,
Like, because I have to tap into it a lot more for other people in their space, and so it is a little bit of a muscle in my experience. I don't know if
agreed.
you'd agree, but like, yeah, it's you, and it takes some practice,
Yeah,
and then
I
some
agree.
reflecting. Like, okay, so that felt like intuition. This happened. Guess it wasn't. Not going to listen to that anymore. And I wish I could think of a great example right now, but nothing's coming to mind. What I'd like to hear from you is, are the voices, do you have any of the clairs? And are the
Yeah.
voices that you hear, like your higher self, your gut, are the voices in your mind different? Or like, do you hear a man's voice, a woman's voice? Do you
Oh,
hear?
interesting. Yeah, so it's funny that you ask me specifically about voices, because that's my strongest psychic sense is clairaudience. And
Okay.
I hear a lot. And when I first had my spiritual and psychic awakening, that was crazy making, because I was raised to think if you hear voices, you're schizophrenic, right? I mean, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
And so luckily for me, in the nick of time, I was able to find a mentor that was able to validate and help me develop those skills and sort of right size everything with that. However, I would say that, yeah, so the voices, it's so interesting. So sometimes it sounds like my thoughts, like my voice. And that's usually when I'm getting information for myself, from myself. I also have the privilege of being able to connect with deceased loved ones.
Right.
So that sounds like it's such a nuanced thing. So my higher self sounds like it's inside my head.
Okay.
When I'm connecting with deceased loved ones, it sounds like it's outside of my head on the right side. I don't know how to say, so like it's almost like someone's like talking to me over here. And sometimes that voice still sounds like mine, but sometimes it does have inflections or tonations of the person, especially if I have known the person personally. I can kind of hear their voice. But if they're someone that I haven't known, oftentimes it does sound a little bit different. Um, there are also
So
times
your
when
higher self is like inside you. You can like hear it in your tone of voice and you can like feel it even, I feel like.
yeah, it's like a knowing. I also have that. It's called, I think it's claircognizance. Like I have this knowing, and that's what comes up the strongest when I'm reading for people.
Okay.
Cognizance, the knowing that the I don't. It's like, how did you know that? It's like, just do, right? Like when you say, and you've
Yeah.
had that experience probably, like where you've said something to people and they're like, how did you know that? It's just like an intuition that's coming through.
Yeah. Because I wouldn't describe to people, right? I think it's really, I know so many people struggle with this. And I think this is, I hope I know the people watching will find this part valuable because I know a lot of people are feng shuiing and doing altars and doing energy work because they're first feeling anxious about something. So once that gets quieter, try and like feel. And when you're trying to talk to I had another question, and I guess this is kind of parlaying us into that. How do you tap into that part of you? Can you turn it on and off? So before I ask you that, to the viewer, once you quiet the mind a little bit, that anxiousness, that rushing, that like frantic feeling, feel, because it sounds like for you and for me that knowing and that higher self is more of a feeling than just like a bunch of noise in the head.
Yes. I would say that's for
Yeah.
most people. I think that's the
Okay.
one intuitive experience we all share is that body feeling, right? They
Okay.
call it like that gut instinct. And your body is sort of an antenna
Okay.
and can like pick things up. And then oftentimes when I'm teaching people intuitive development, the first exercise we do, and we do this in my Learn Tarot course because it does merge with
Great.
intuition, is finding out your body's signal for the binary system of yes, no. Because if you can
Ooh.
get a yes, no down, you can frame almost any question that you have in your life as a yes or a no. So you can almost use your body like a pendulum. Sometimes it's like more kinesthetic like that. Sometimes it's a feeling, like some people will feel like a no feels like a heaviness in their chest. A yes feels like a lightness. It's different for everyone. But once you can
Cool.
establish that and practice with that, sometimes a yes, a lot of times could be body chills. That's what happened for me at first. So if you can orient yourself towards your own personal yes, no, that's a great place to start with intuition. And it's something that everyone has because I do think that there's like a resonance in your body. That's why we get chills about things. That's why we can feel someone's energy and we get like if it's bad, sometimes the energy will stand
Yeah.
up, like our hairs will stand up. Our bodies are reacting to something.
Yeah. That's so cool. Okay, so then let's merge the question of how do you tap into that part of you talking to we were talking about how you do sometimes hear a different voice and it's outside of you. So like how would we merge these two questions? In the movies to tap into this part, right? Like the witch on the TV is like rolling her eyes back. It's a whole song and dance and she's like, "Now I'm talking to the ghosts." Like I don't really think that's that's not how my experience with professional mediums, that's not my experience with you. You guys seem to just like be able to tap into this other realm. So like is there any
Yeah.
kind of tool to do that?
Yeah. I mean, the tool that helped me, and this is why I am an advocate for it, is tarot. Because tarot is a great combination of giving you a language to speak with your intuition, and a way to connect with your intuition so you're not starting from scratch. And it's also is like going to the gym. Like you were saying, intuition is like a workout. Well, if intuition is like a workout, tarot is like the weights that you're lifting over and
Ooh.
over again. And
Okay.
so for me, I developed a lot of my psychic and intuitive gifts through tarot, mainly out of necessity. So for me, my gifts went wide open and there was too much, too fast, too soon. And so with the help of a mentor, I sort of narrowed my focus, and it's like, okay, I want to gain the most of my intuition and access to information through this medium because it's controllable, it felt safe, and also, like I said, it has a language built in through symbology, and my psyche and my intuition can very easily become fluent in the language of tarot. So
Mm.
that's why I believe in tarot so strongly. And that's why I love to teach people how to read for themselves and not just get readings from me, because it was a very quick guide to my intuition to get the most clear, nuanced, in-depth messages. And I do believe that anyone can do it. I do believe that everyone has an intuition. I think that
Yeah.
just like with any other skill, some people are really gifted at art or is meant to be a lawyer and they are exceedingly good at those things. So there are certain people like me that just has a talent and a gift for intuition, but that doesn't mean I didn't work really hard too. So at whatever level you are, I believe you can practice and get there. And then I would say another way of how you check in or connect to your intuition, and it is the least popular answer, is
Mhm.
healing, like actually healing trauma. So if you think about your intuition like a pipe, like that's how I feel. It's like a channel, like a pipe. If you've got a lot of trauma, a lot of issues that are unresolved, a lot of emotional stuckness, the pipe
Mhm.
is sort of clogged. And for me, I had my biggest psychic awakening during a period of time where I cleared the pipes. And then all of a
Ooh.
sudden it was like the energy could flow. So healing, and then also meditation. No one likes to hear it. But if you can get in command of your nervous system, your
Yeah.
mind, be practiced in stillness, that is the easiest way to actually get these messages when you're not hyper aroused, you're not stressed, you're not, moving 1,000 miles an hour. So it's boring and it's work to
It
say
is work.
healing and, meditation and things like that. But those are the things that helped me. And then finding a medium. If tarot is not your medium, cool. But I find that systems are useful to me, and I'm an experiential learner, so tarot is very experiential. Um, that
Yeah.
those would be my
Well,
specialty for me.
that leads us to the great next question from Magaruski. Tips
Mhm.
to open, expand your intuition and or know if you have psychic abilities. So to like wrap out or like round out this question, you would say meditation, clearing, and clearing the trauma, kind of,
Yeah,
right?
and then finding a tool or a method to
And then
practice
finding
your
a tool or method.
intuition. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's just
channeling it.
that's what I think. A deregulated nervous system makes it very hard to trust yourself and to be clear, personally.
Right. Yeah. I, the Yeah. The meditation, like the people that say, I can't sit still long enough to meditate because my mind's going too much, like that is your sign to meditate because you're missing half the messages. I, again, my opinion,
Right.
but if you can't do that, then yeah, I agree with you 100%. I have never thought of it in like the channel and the pipe, but well, actually, when we get into tarot, I had a funny story about a meditation, but meditating is like such a way to sort it out and clearing. I don't know. Did you just say? Did I just say? But I'm agreeing with everything you said. That meditating is you're missing out on messages that are important for you and higher self messages and messages from your intuition. If that stillness, if you can't tap into that stillness.
Yeah, and I would say this, and this is a theory. This is a theory that I've been working on because I've been talking to one of my best friends about meditation, and she has a very hard time meditating. And
Okay.
I used to have a very hard time meditating. So I also think meditation is a skill and a muscle that you can develop over time. But I would say if you have a very hard time meditating, it is possible, this is a theory, that your nervous system doesn't feel safe enough to not be moving and strategizing and thinking. And there's probably some healing work to be done there so that you can allow your system to relax and to be quiet and still. I think that constant thinking, constant movement, constant action could also be a low-key defense mechanism
Oh,
that's giving you
1,000%.
that's giving you a sign that's like, oh, maybe I actually don't feel safe, even though I'm in my apartment, or my home, in my office, whatever. And like you are technically safe. Safety is like a more broad feeling of I can relax. I can actually relax and trust myself and my environment and everything that I'm cared for and I'm safe. So just something to think about.
No, I think 1,000%. The overactive brain, off at least in my experience, comes from somebody who had to think about every single outcome. If I thought about outcomes A through Z, you couldn't pull one over on me. You couldn't fool me. I was totally in control. You couldn't, nothing would surprise me because I had analyzed every single possible thing. And so at least that's from the analytical perspective of a busy mind. But what I think is what I would encourage people to do, if that's your type of busy brain, if that's what's keeping you from meditation or clearing, is you're like, I don't want to find out what's on the other side. There is only freedom and lightness on the other side of the stillness. And there's only freedom and lightness. Like, yeah, you're going to feel something gross as it comes out of the pipe. But once it's gone, it's like gone. There's nothing. I think it gets scary. Like, oh, I'm peeling back these layers. I don't want to find out something bad. And it's like, yeah, but once you find out the bad thing, it's gone. Because you can acknowledge it and bring light to it. And
there no matter what. It's there whether you know it or not.
Yeah, or that. Yeah. So
it's impacting you. That's the unconscious. We're not going to get into it, but it is actually probably running your life. It's probably that thing you're afraid to look at is probably running your life.
Yeah. And so there's only, maybe we won't say only, an opinion can change later. This statement can change later. But in the time of this recording, I would stand by there's only good things on the other side of giving light to that stuff. More freedom, more confidence, more understanding. So tips to open or expand your intuition. There you go. There's your answer. Let's go ahead and get into tarot. Now, I'll be honest. Tarot was the energy modality that I've always been the most skeptical about. So it's actually really funny that you're one of my very few guests on here, or one of the first people I'm advocating for other people going to look at and work with. Yeah, so tarot was always, I don't know. I mean, since I could walk and read, I have been reading crystals and aliens and hieroglyphics and energy stuff and horoscopes. I love all of it. But for some reason for me, tarot was always the one I was the most skeptical about. And I don't know if it's because I'm particularly intuitive. And so if I did dabble in it and get a reading, I'd be like, I don't think you even believe what you're saying. So I think there's a little bit of trusting the reader, finding a reputable reader, what's their training. But for everybody watching, the way I met Kelley, I also wanted to share this story because it just shows the serendipity of Feng Shui. So in 2019, I was listening to Girls Gotta Eat podcast episode, and one of your good friends is Ashley, and Ashley as a host on Girls Gotta Eat, was talking about Kelley, her tarot card reader, and how she got this great reading, and she gets a reading every year, and she reread or relisted that Kelley said all this stuff was going to happen. And then here we are at the end of the year, all this stuff happened. And I was like, oh, really cool. And I just kind of put it in my brain. That was 2019-ish. And then when I got let go and was like, is this the time I become a Feng Shui consultant and start a Feng Shui business? I was like, I need to ask every modality. Tarot, psychics. I was like, this feels good, but I just need confirmation on every single level. And I had remembered Kelley's shop being mentioned, and at the time I could not afford Kelley's reading. And so I went to one of her readers. She has other great readers. I also, not so much even the afford, I just also was like, I don't know if I fully believe this, so I don't want to go all in, right? I'd rather use one of her assistant readers. And your reader that I worked with was fantastic. That was actually, I don't really remember what she said about Feng Shui. I remember saying the card saying yes, go do it. There's good things. But speaking of meditation, this is what I was referring to. What really came up in that reading, I will remember, she was like, you have to get into meditation. You have to
Mm.
start meditating. So I was not really a meditator before 2020 when I got let go. And so this conversation is really coming full circle because, yeah, she was like, you have to get into meditating. And I listened and I did like a Marissa Peer masterclass or something. And just, I think every day since I have meditated, like
Wow.
basically every day since 2020. And yeah, it totally transformed my life. And like that's why I'm a huge advocate for meditation. Like I'm just like sit down, shut up, and do it because like this good stuff will come in. And so I also share all that because then I this year got asked to be on the Betches You Up podcast. I had seen Kelley was already on it. She had already been interviewed. And this is like how Feng Shui works too. Even though seeds are planted in 2019, you watch every single serendipitous moment. Like it is not a coincidence or a surprise to me that we are having this conversation today and that like we are here. So I would love to hear, I have a tarot question, but I wanted to also give that example of like, you guys, these things are very subtle, but everything leads to the next thing, right? Like if I hadn't really done meditation, would I have gotten the downloads to lead me to these places, to have given me the confidence to go on that podcast or to even reach out to Kelley? You know, like there's so many pieces stack and I think it's so beautiful. So there's a few different, we had a question come in that said, how did you get into tarot? So you can answer that. But also we got the question, how do you help your clients make progress or make big life decisions using tarot? So I think that's kind of one and the same. You can obviously tell your origin story, or just how you use it in your life to help you. Because you mentioned this is like kind of the way you channel it, right? Channeled
Yeah.
this awakening
Yeah.
that you had. So I think it's a one and the
Yeah.
same question.
So I learned tarot before I had my psychic awakening or my intuitive awakening, but it never
Mm,
felt integrated. It felt
okay.
like I would pull a card, then I would read a book and see what it means. It was not connecting and it wasn't in the flow, but I wanted to learn it because I was part of this community and that's sort of one of the things that they offered to teach us. And so as I was doing my healing and self-improvement work, I got curious about tarot and learned it. But it didn't, like I said, it didn't feel like an intuitive process. It felt like a more intellectual process almost. And that wasn't as fun for me. Then I had my awakening, which really helped with the intuitive piece. But then also I connected with a very specific deck at the time. It was Kim Cran's The Wild Unknown. And
Okay.
there was something about the art in that deck that spoke to me. And all of a sudden, it felt like the cards were animated and coming to life. And I could see and hear and sense the story of it. And it clicked. And when I got that deck, everything changed for me regarding my reading
Wow.
for myself. And then what I started doing was I started putting the decks was really cool. And I started an Instagram account called Modern Mystic. And I was just posting not my face or anything like that because I was still sort of closeted in that sense, but these
Mm.
beautiful photos of these cards and the readings and that I came up with. And then people started messaging me and it grew that way. So that's how I got into tarot. And I've been doing it professionally. I lose track, but I think since 2012 or 2011, maybe 20 in that window. So about 10 years. And I got really popular really fast because I was number one, I was good at it. And number
Yeah.
two, I have a different approach. I feel like so to answer your question of how do I help clients,
Yeah.
my goal is to help you reach your goals. And I use tarot as the method to gain clarity and insight. And so I trust the cards. I trust that I'm getting the right messages. And so, for instance, if you came to me, so let's just say a big life decision, and you're like, hey, like say it was you back in, what did you say, 2019? Like,
20.
do I do this feng shui business or do I keep my own business? So what I would do is I would sit with you and first I would pull cards to see where you are with career, mind, body, spirit. Like, let's take your temperature of where you're at. Is there anything stuck? Is there anything moving? Like, where does this feel? Like, where is she just as a overall overview? Then I would pull cards to see, let's see the path for her staying where she's at, doing the same job, right?
Mm.
So let's pull and see what that story looks like. What are the energies there? Let's see the opposite path. Let's see her, quitting her job and doing this new business. Let's tell the story of that and see the energies there. And then oftentimes, or sometimes I'll pull a third option. Is there something that we're not even thinking about? Because so often we limit ourselves and we're like, these are the two paths, is option A
Yeah.
and B. And it's like, well, what about a third option? Maybe there's another way. Maybe there's a hybrid situation. Because I do like to, especially with career transitions, I like to take into account the person's psyche, their risk tolerance, or whatever, because sometimes these big leaps for certain people can put them in such a survival mode that they actually won't be successful if they take the jump all at once. And we need to like pull up the next
Maybe
highest rung
separate.
for them. Yeah, it depends.
Mm.
Everyone's different. I would also like to look into, for people often, there's generally two types of folks. One are the type of folks that need to have purpose in career. It's part of their soul's mission and their soul's journey. They have to feel like they have soul's purpose with work. Not everyone's like that, believe it or not. You're a soul purpose person, so it might blow your mind. But sometimes people just like to have a job that they can do and feel okay about, get a paycheck, and then they find purpose in other areas of their life, maybe through parenthood, maybe through, hobbies, sports, whatever. And so it's also so I would also probably look into that for that, like for that person, or
Ooh, yeah,
whatever
like
the
you have to
topic
be
is.
so concerned about it.
Yeah,
You have
sometimes
to
it
be
doesn't
so
matter.
worried. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
So
that's important for people to hear.
yeah, and that's for any area of life. Lately, I've been speaking to a lot of women about motherhood, for instance. Should I think we're one of the first generations where we're seriously considering that as instead of a default path, right? And for some women, I'll be speaking to them and I was like, this looks like part of your soul's journey. Like this looks like an adventure that you signed up for. Maybe pursue this path. But for many women, it's a choice. It's a choice. Like, and it's not so hard and fast written in sort of like the timeline of your experience in this lifetime. So that's sort of how I help people. Like, is this, like, how important is this? You're putting a lot of weight in this. Is it part of
Mhm.
your soul's evolution or not? Is it
Mhm.
a clear yes, no, or is it a choice? And you get to kind of choose your own adventure. And then let's see the outcome, the probable outcome of these different paths for you. And I'm just going to tell you the story. I often don't tell you what to do. And you tell me as you're listening to this, which sounds most exciting. This is where your intuition kicks in. Like, that
Yeah.
sounds great. Ooh, that sounds scary. And that's why also with a reading, you also, as the recipient of the reading, have the responsibility to use your discernment, your intuition about what works and what doesn't. Do not ever substitute someone else's intuition or what they're saying for something that you know is true. And so that's how I approach readings. And I don't know that everyone approaches it that way, but it's what works for me and my clients.
I don't think everybody does, and that kind of clicked a little bit in my head. I have not gotten a lot of tarot readings, and like I said, because I was skeptical. But if I think back to like one that kind of I wrote it off forever, that's sort of I think what I was trying to express is like, since I'm pretty intuitive, I think I was thinking it had to be this way. And it's like, it's not psychic. Like, your intuition should play a part. You're encouraging us to like also listen to your intuition, also do what feels good. This is not like end all be all and how does like it interpret. It's not like here's your future, here's the
Yeah.
card.
Yeah, and that's a great point about the future. So I don't do predictions. I call them forecasts. So a forecast is not set in stone. I am tapping into the most likely outcome based on the decisions and the momentum that you have created to date. So you've lived a whole life before you sat down in front of me, and your train or your car, let's say, is going in this direction. And if you keep going in this direction, this is the most likely outcome in these areas of your life. There are very few things that are set in stone, but there are certain things I feel like we have agreed to sort of go through. But that's how I see it. So this is a likely outcome. Now, if you're in a reading with me and you're like, well, that's not the outcome I was hoping for, most of the time I can then pull cards to say, well, what steps would you need to take or what changes would you need to make to reroute yourself to where you want to go? And so I am weary of readers who tell you this is for sure your future. That is not my experience. It's a forecast. It's a likelihood. It's a probability. In most cases, it is not a certainty.
Because of current momentum and current choices. So
Yeah. Yeah, for
Can always
sure.
be shifted and altered. Because I was going to ask that. I know there's somebody out there saying, like, I'm hesitant to get a reading or I'm hesitant to learn tarot or how to do tarot because I don't, again, I hear this all the time with Feng Shui. I don't want to hear anything bad. And I'm
Mhm.
sure you hear this too.
I
Well,
do.
I would do it, but I don't want to hear anything bad. And there's a reframe that needs to be happened there.
Yeah,
Because if this
right.
is not what's in control of your life, you're in control of your life.
This is information. This is
Yeah.
information, and by hearing the information, you can make more informed choices. And then also with tarot, I try to live by this, but sometimes I'm a hypocrite. But I teach and learn tarot. There are no bad cards. There are no bad cards. There are more challenging energies in cards that, there are more challenging phases of life and things that we go through, but they're not bad. Every card is neutral and it has a lesson buried in there for you. And my and it reminds me of my counselor, and he says everything is an effing gift. I don't know if we say F words here, so an effing gift, which means that even if it's like a gift wrapped in a turd, it's still a gift in there. And the
Yeah.
thing that you've got to move through the garbage to get there, that's available to us. There's a gift in all of it with that reframe, that you're discussing. So the same as with tarot, the same as with finding like out bad information. Most information is neutral, and it's like what we place on it and how we take it and how we synthesize it and categorize it as bad or good.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people with Feng Shui, they get freaked out or there's I mean, and not because they made it up. It's because there's a series of Feng Shui people out there that are like, "Oh, this is bad in your house. This is the energy that's wrong." And I'm of the same vein as you where it's like if you think that life is happening for you, you can use everything to your advantage and you can use every situation you have to your advantage. Um and energy is neutral. Like nobody said you got this card because your life's supposed to suck and you got put in this house because your life's supposed to suck and like you're screwed. That's it. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. So I love that there is silver lining to everything. And to wrap it up, I would love, do you have like a cool, quick client tarot before and after? And then tell us about this learning course. But is there one that like sticks out where you're like,
I'm drawing a blank as for a specific example, but I will say that I have a lot of repeat clients, and they start their readings with, "It happened exactly how you said it would," where I made, this thing happened or that thing happened, or yeah, I'm trying to think of like a before and after. I've had the privilege of being trusted with a lot of sensitive information with people at very vulnerable periods of their life.
Mm,
And I see myself as sort of like a sign when you're at a fork in the road. A lot of clients are coming to me saying, I have a big decision to make, like that question that was asked. I need to change, I need to shift. And
mm,
so oftentimes I see myself as like maybe nudging you this way. And just that, you know, I don't know, 10-degree shift in trajectory can change your life down the road quite a bit. So I'm having a hard time thinking of specific examples, but I guess I just will
okay.
say I've got a lot of repeat clients and they say, "Yep, it happened just like that. Now here I'm at this new place. Let's have a similar conversation." Um and I feel really privileged that people like you actually do the things that you are suggested that come up at the reading. Like you were suggested to meditate and you did, and you had the change. And I think that's another thing. Like a tarot reading is not going to change your life if
No.
you don't actually integrate and take in the information and then make the changes or the suggestions. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Well, and the same thing with
um
Feng Shui, all of it, all these energy modalities, guys, like everything, it's not going to fix it for you. It's going to help, it's going to guide, it's going to make next steps clearer so that you're not so paralyzed by all the thoughts. You're not so paralyzed by the fear, the um what's the word like analysis paralysis, right? These things like help move along your life. So, and well, I'll be a before and after for you. We're in the middle of one. We're in the middle of one. Kelley and I did a reading. that needs about like 90 days. So I'll be the before and after story you can think of, but we're in the middle of it, so we're not going to spoil it. But let's go ahead. But I know that there's good things in the works because we're like seeing the momentum. But go ahead and tell us, there's people who want to, I think this is great. The people who are like, I would love to channel a little bit and get out of my head a little bit and channel more and use this as connecting with my intuition. How will the Learn Tarot class help them? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I created the Learn Tarot program because it's the tarot program I wish that I had when I was teaching myself, all these years. And so I try to cover everyone's various learning styles. So the way that the program is laid out is it's broken up into 6 weeks. And then each week I release a video lesson that is usually less than an hour, anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour. And we break this up into sort of chunks. So you're not learning the whole deck on week one. And then I take you through a method that I've created I call it my tarot grid. So when I was teaching myself, I wasn't great at memorization, but I'm good at spotting patterns. And I learned that if you learn the energy of the suits or the elements, and you learn the tarot numerology, what each number means, you can cross-reference them and you can get into the ballpark meaning of all of the cards very quickly. And that's how I've expedited the process for my students to learn. Is I gave them sort of a hack, like a cheat sheet,
Yeah,
as to how to learn it quickly. Yeah. So every week you get your lesson. You have a few days to go through it. Then once a week on Wednesday evenings, you bring all of your questions to our live call. So this is where we're working through your questions, your blocks. Oftentimes we'll get some practice in together, and then and we do that every single week. And then in the meantime, we have a WhatsApp channel, and that's where your daily questions or when you get stuck, if you can't wait for the call, you post it there so that everyone can learn from your questions. And then you also get put into a cohort. This is your accountability group. And every day you're going to be practicing tarot, not very long, just a few minutes a day. But that's sort of where you're going to post your daily readings. You're going to, build camaraderie with your cohort. And so that there's all these different levels. You get the experience, you have the teacher where you have access to me to answer all your questions, because a lot of people fail because they get stuck and they don't, know where to turn. And then you have your accountability group, which I find is really helpful when you're learning a new skill, and then also trying to develop the habit of pulling cards every day as a daily practice. And then towards the end of the program, that's really when we get into the sort of the art of reading and pulling it all together and the intuitive work. Because once you learn, this is why it's so important, I think, to learn the meanings of the cards, at least with keywords, which is where we get into. So I'm not going to teach you, I'm not the teacher if you want the most in-depth understanding of every single card. I'm the teacher that if you want to get the general meanings and some keywords for every card as a gateway to your intuition, so that your intuition can fill in the gaps, I'm the one for you, because that's how I use tarot, as a gateway to the intuition. But I find that once people want to know what the right meaning. So if I can give you a few keywords that you're not tricking yourself into, what reading the cards is however you want, it creates that relaxation of the mind so that your intuition can come through.
Yeah, one of our conversation went a little bit out of order, but I had an outline, and one of the questions I'm sure people ask is, how do you trust your interpretations? But if you take our whole conversation, we could kind of summarize that, right? Like, you said that there's a guide to understanding your yes and no, where you can kind of use yourself as a pendulum. And so you'll clear that up for people. And then you're saying, like, there's not like a right and wrong. There's a guide where you're not totally just making up the card every single day, but it is like helping you connect to you more.
Yeah. And you've got to just keep yourself honest. Like, when you're trying to manipulate something, that's the kind of, so it's really also that self-discovery journey. And I will say this, people come to my course to learn tarot, but they also learn a lot about themselves and how they take on life in the world, because how you approach tarot or how you approach learning something new will show you a lot about your control, your perfectionism, being a good student, getting things right, like all of those traits that actually keep you rigid and disconnect you from your intuition. So you'll also learn a lot about yourself
That's amazing.
approaching something new. Like
And
you're
what a
watching.
great way. If okay, I'm trying to think. Somebody would say, like, because you mentioned the clearing your traumas and the meditating. What if I don't meditate or I haven't cleared my traumas yet? Would you say this is still an okay starting point?
Yeah, I do. I do, because it's sort of like the same thing as saying you can't get in a relationship until you're fully healed. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you
Which
know,
some people use that use, but yeah.
right. It's like there's ways in which you can use everything to help heal you. Everything is
Great.
self-awareness. If you're moving through life intentionally, you'll notice, like I said, how do I show up in a new space with people that I don't know? How do I show up as a student? Can I even get into the space of beginner's mind when I am, 40 years old learning something new? It's
Ooh.
uncomfortable not to know. And so I don't know, if you're a mindful person and you're doing that inner inquiry, you will also learn a lot about yourself as you learn tarot.
Yeah. And well, what maybe a fun gateway to maybe the card will tell you to meditate and say, yeah, this is actually a priority, lady. Do it. Like,
Four of
hi.
Swords.
So yeah.
There's a card for that. Yeah, there's a
Well, there
card
you
for that.
go. So this is what a good like step if you guys are going in finishing the year, and then it will give you insight before 2025 of like you'll have this whole tool for 2025 to go smoother and clearer because the course is or the class and the cohort and course is 6 weeks. So
It's technically 7 weeks long, but 6 weeks of course, because we take an intermission over Thanksgiving. We take that week off, but also it gives you a little buffer to catch up because
yep,
life happens and sometimes you
of
people get
course.
behind. But I will say this is what I'm most proud of. No one has ever started this course and not finished it. And I think
Wow,
that's a
that's
really
crazy
good.
impressive.
Yeah, and I've taught several hundred people through this method. So it's fun, it's easy enough that people don't get discouraged, it's paced in a good way. I think the accountability partners have a lot to do with people keeping up. So I
Yeah.
just want to I think that's my biggest point of pride. I've never had
That's
anyone drop
amazing.
out once they started.
Yeah, no, that's such a big deal. I've done maybe not so many, but I've done a lot of even just courses or group things where like half the group isn't even finishing it. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. I'm excited for you guys. What a great tool to have to set you up for just like clarity and more guidance moving forward throughout 2025 and even by like December. So thank you so much, Kelley, for being here. If you
Thanks for
guys
having
enjoyed
me.
this video, like it, share it with your girlfriend that's like on YouTube all the time saying, watching all the tarot readings, and she's watching like 10 tarot readings in a row on YouTube, and you're like, Sarah, you need to just go learn how to read your own tarot, right? That's the girl that needs to just take your class. All
Yes, for sure.
right. Thanks for being here. Bye bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.